Hi, everyone. I don't know. I bet you've all had this experience of being in this place, of meeting someone for the very first time and feeling like you've been with them or known them forever. And Anne and I just physically met. That's changing my name on the fly. Physically met just about 15 minutes ago, and we're even dressed alike. But I told her as soon as she came on that just visiting her website and sinking into the energy of what she represents and how she shows up for the world right now just lit me up from the inside out. And I'm super excited to bring her here to Facebook for this conversation, to talk to her about the End of Seeking, both the End of Seeking conference, and the link is right there. We'd love for you to join us September 16th through the 18th, but also just in general, her website title is The End of Seeking, and it's just it's a beautiful place to be. Hi, Anne. I'm so glad you're joining me all the way from Australia.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone who's joined us today.
So I'm going to read, I told Anne I was probably not going to read her bio, but I'm going to read the bio anyway, because it's going to lead us into the conversation and just agreed to have for all of us. Anne spent a good 25 years searching. And then in the midst of, I'm reading this, in the midst of a spiritual and personal crisis, she left her last teacher, right? And she realized that she's always been her true nature, the unchanging, boundless, timeless, ever fulfilled self, feeling emotional and very much at peace. And then in recent years, she started to talk and write publicly about her experience and about this profound shift of identity and understanding very clearly, though. And it's a beautiful thing, because we're with at least one person I study, she says the same thing, not as a teacher, not as somebody out here, but as a friend and an advisor. And through that, Anne created the End of Seeking website as a free resource to help simplify and demystify the spiritual search for others, and to give seekers the tools and knowledge they need to independently navigate the often confusing and at times hazardous, that should be an interesting conversation too, hazardous contemporary spiritual marketplace. We were talking, and I think you had a conversation, a podcast with Bill Free recently, and this entire conference pulled inspiration from your website, just an opportunity to come and experience time with some beautiful teachers from all around the world who are focused on helping people step into and realize their true self using so many different tools. Yeah. So while I was sitting and talking to you before we began, I'd love to hear whatever you want to say about the conference, about yourself, about what you want people to know, but also thought it'd be really, really cool if we had a conversation from your perspective along the lines of how we have over 2,000 people that have already registered for the conference, right? How you suggest they come and sit in all these different sessions. What should they be looking for, or how should they feel, or how should you take in the information? There's some really, really big names going to be there this weekend. How do you hold your true self? How do you pull in the information from these teachers without getting lost, either in a guru kind of relationship or a student teacher? I think I'm going to be quiet now, even mute. Listen to what you have to share.
Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction. Thank you. I think that's a great topic for conversation. I'd like to just briefly go over what my session, or Amir in my session, is about, just to give people a sense of what we're going to be doing. And then I would like to go into that topic that you brought up. So I'll be joined by Amir Freiman in the session, and Amir is a long-term seeker himself, but he's also an academic researcher into the nature of the awakened state. And he has interviewed dozens of spiritual teachers and exemplars from around the world. He has published a book called Spiritual Transmission, Paradoxes and Dilemmas on the Spiritual Path. And this is his life's passion. He'll be interviewing me, but he'll also be bringing a great deal of himself and his knowledge, understanding, and experience into the session. And our session is called The End of Seeking, Who or What Remains. So we will be talking about what it means to come to the end of seeking for oneself, and how do you know when you've come to the end of seeking. We'll also be talking about, it's interesting that the topic of the conference, the paradox of awakening. And while I was thinking about the topic and preparing for the conference, I realized actually that awakening is riddled with paradoxes, not just one paradox, many paradoxes. So we will discuss some of those paradoxes. Some of them would be, let me see, if, and I think this is one of the key quotes of the conference, if we are that which we seek, why is it so difficult to realize it? Why do we have to strive, and why does it take so long? What is involved in that whole process? Another paradox is the ordinariness of awakening, how it is simply a return to one's natural state. It's not some other thing that lands on you that's nothing to do with you. It's a return home more than anything else. So there's a great ground of ordinariness and a sense of everything turning the right way up for oneself. And simultaneously, the paradox is that it is extraordinary. There's a sense of limitlessness, timelessness, a connectedness to all things, an intimacy with all things. And so you in this understanding or knowledge, you contain both of those things, very ordinary human being with all the same, qualities. It's not like you turn into a different person. And at the same time, something very different does happen. So we'd like to talk about those two, the ordinary and the extraordinary nature of this unfolding in awareness. We would talk about seeking ending, coming to the end of seeking, but that doesn't mean that evolution stops or growth stops. What it does mean is that endless reaching for something just outside of one's grasp finishes, and the endless looking for answers outside oneself stops. And the sense that there's something missing or not right in oneself, that something fundamental hasn't happened for us, that is all resolved. All of that is resolved. And from a place of having all of that forward momentum stopping, we start to grow outwards. So instead of this sort of forward linear momentum trying to get somewhere, we've landed in who we are. But then there's more unraveling, more unveiling, more knowledge that comes, more understanding that comes, more insight that comes, but from a place of stillness and inner resolution, inner integration. So that's a kind of overview, if you like, of our session. We'll also have time for question and answer at the end. But I think that gives a good sense of what we're going to be discussing, Cindy.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And it sounds fabulous. And as I was listening to you, I'm coming right back to the conversation we began before we hit the go live button, because one would wonder, based on all you said, how does one approach a conference like this if we have stopped seeking outside of ourselves to discover who we are? How do we connect with all these seeming beings who are outside of ourselves, who are offering different teachings or ideas or retreats or conference, all the different things that our participants are going to be exposed to for 3 days? What do we do with that? There appears to be another paradox between don't looking outside and hanging out with all these amazing people.
Well, yes, as I said, it's a very, very good and key question. And I think we have to recognize that it's very confusing, that we're at a time in existence where all the teachings are available to us with the click of a button. And like in this conference, 20 fabulous teachers and speakers. How do you know how to navigate that? How do you know who is right for you? How do you know who has the clearest understanding? So I think firstly, not to take it personally that you might feel overwhelmed or at a loss of how to proceed, in an intelligent way, in a way that is going to be right for you. So to be humble in the face of an enormous amount of choice and an enormous degree of complexity. So that would be one thing. And I think what I'm very keen and why I started the website really, because I'm not a teacher, as Cindy said, I'm not a teacher. But I, as a seeker, ended up in quite a few dead ends. I experienced some bad teachers who sort of fell out of their own integrity and went into all sorts of. So I've kind of run the gamut, if you like, of the ways to fall flat on your face in spiritual life. So I feel I'm very experienced in what doesn't really work. And I wanted to make so that the next generation of seekers didn't have to make the same mistakes that I've made. They can make new mistakes, but at least they don't have to make the same mistakes that I made. And so what I try to do and through the website is to give, as you said, give seekers the tools and the understanding of what they're actually looking for. So you have to, as a starting point, know what it is that you want or have a sense of what it is that you want. Otherwise, it's very easy to be dazzled by a charismatic teacher who might not necessarily have a lot of substance. That doesn't apply to anyone at the conference, but there are many teachers, who have a wonderful presence and who give an energy transmission and so on, but they're not necessarily going to be right for your path or for you. So it's there's a big part of the work as a seeker is to really understand yourself and what it is that you want, what it is that you're longing and looking for, and to be very honest with yourself about that. And sometimes seekers can confuse psychological needs with spiritual needs, that they're unhappy or that they have issues and so on and so forth. And they're looking for a way to soothe themselves through meditation or through spiritual experiences. And that is a kind of what's called spiritual bypassing. You actually have to deal with your stuff. That's just part of the deal, that if you're going to become stabilized in your understanding and your spiritual understanding, the foundation has to be there. So you need to deal with whatever it is going on in your life and in yourself to give that strong foundation. Otherwise, you will be pulled in different ways and you need to have everything and know everything and understand everything. How do you hold your ground? How do you both benefit from their obvious wisdom and deep insight while not losing yourself? And the key way of doing that is that you need that foundation. You need to have done that work where you understand yourself and you have, in a sense, done the work or are doing the work to sort yourself out so that there is a ground there. So you can absorb what is an extraordinary gift of consciousness, really, that's being shared. without losing yourself in that exchange. So that would be one very key thing. And I'm very big on, I think because I have experienced teachers who, as I said, didn't walk their talk, or kind of fell off fell out of their own integrity, or went on the wrong road. And the spiritual history is filled with those sorts of teachers, unfortunately. So I'm very, very big on a teacher's integrity and transparency. And I'm very big on teachers not making themselves the center of attention. But I'm very big on and very supportive of teachers whose interest is in the evolution of the student. And I think that's a key thing to look for when looking for a guide or a teacher, that you feel that they're there for you, that they're teaching, and that their interest and their attention is focused on the student, not trying to get, adoration or what have you for themselves, attention for themselves. And there are many good teachers like that. So that would be another thing. I think again, I just want to emphasize this need to be grounded in oneself, because having done the work to achieve that groundedness, but being willing to be humble in the face of what you don't know, because what this whole enterprise, the search, is about, in a sense, is going into the unknown. And the tools that we normally use, which is mostly for us, it's our mind. And this is another paradox we're coming into here. This shift of perspective, shift of identity, understanding of oneself beyond the personal self, beyond the thought processing entity. I've lost my train of thought now. That sentence went on for so long. Where was I, Cindy? Can you remind me? Oh, you're muted. Okay.
I always think it's so rude when people can't hear me while I'm muted. But you were talking about the paradox of like using the mind, yes, but going past the mind.
Yes. So you have to be willing to go beyond the known as far as what you know in your mind. But at the same time, it's essential to use your mind to be discriminating. It's essential to use your mind to, and I think this is something in the spiritual world that I would very much like to encourage, that people use their critical thinking skills. If what I'm hearing, does that actually make sense to me? Is that taking me closer to myself? Or does it feel like it's taking me away from myself? Am I having to do mental gymnastics in order to understand this or to try to integrate it? Am I sort of torturing myself trying to take on someone else's worldview when I actually have my own inner knowing? And we all have this. And I think it's very important to encourage this for everyone, that each of us has a central sort of guiding light inside that tells us when something is right or not right for us, tells us when this is maybe not the right direction or maybe not the right approach. And part of the work, a big part of the work, is learning to trust that. I think an unfortunate aspect of the way spiritual life is set up, is that it's easy to give away one's own power to these powerful individuals, these very knowledgeable and awakened beings. And they're not necessarily asking for that. Some are, but the teachers that I'm speaking about with integrity and who are there for their students, not for themselves, they don't want that kind of transference or that kind of adoration. But there's a great need in many seekers who haven't done that essential work on themselves to give themselves over to someone else. Take care of me, do it for me. Get me enlightened. I don't want to have to do the work. Well, actually, we all have to do the work. And it can be very grueling. It can take a long time. And it can feel at different times that you're not getting anywhere. But no one can do that work for you. And that's why it's essential that however much you love and respect and benefit from a teacher, that you maintain that flame of your own knowing self, that you never lose that and give yourself blindly away, because eventually you will only have to come back, because no one can find you for yourself, only you, and you can have all the help in the world and all the instruction in the world and the most wonderful teachers, but the path is yours to walk, and only you can walk it, and only you as the inner teacher can find yourself, can lead you to who you truly are. So for me, that's probably the most important thing. So being humble in the face of what you don't know, and being willing to travel into territory that's unfamiliar and unknown, and to trust and to build, in this modern day and age, we don't have a lot of trust generally, but if you find a good teacher and you use your critical thinking skills to discriminate if this is the right thing for you, and you check that teacher out and all the rest of it in the teaching, and it all makes sense to you, and it's all sound, then you give yourself to that. But in the giving of yourself to that, there's always the retaining of this self-knowing, this self-trusting. And I think that's really, really key. And a lot of the drama and trauma that many people experience during their spiritual path would be taken care of if people
take responsibility.
Yeah, take self-responsibility.
So this is what I've heard in listening to you, just in summary, is number one and foremost, as you come into the conference or you come and listen to any teacher at any time, go in knowing what it is you're looking for. You're looking for self-realization or truth realization or tools to help you with your own inner, whatever. Have a good feel, number one. Be somewhat aware of who that being, the teacher is, that because there are energy transmissions and personifications, and it can be kind of cool to shower yourself in someone's energy. Be wary of that and just know a little bit about who it is and what their objective is. The use of the mind is interesting, because I was just working with a group and studying Rupert Spira on how to use the mind. So much of his teaching is about stepping away, but this, just within the last week, I heard that in what you just said, the ability to use this beautiful tool to turn around and inquire is what I'm hearing useful for me. How does that feel inside of me? Does my inner wisdom, so we can use our logical and our thought processes, the mind that so many of us want to put aside, we can put it to work to question what it is we're hearing. Yeah, so.
Yes.
And the other thing, because it keeps coming up, and I heard you talk about the fact that it is our responsibility to do the work, the knowing, awakening, knowing that there's this space is one thing, but it doesn't end. The inner clarity, the inner stillness, the expansion continues. And I did a Facebook Live, well, at this point it was about 7 hours ago, with Jeff Bailey, who will be at the conference. And one of the things he likes to say is that healing's not linear. There's a cyclic effect, and he reminds his students, he's a yoga instructor, he reminds his students all the time not to evaluate progress based on outer circumstances and how the body's feeling. Just be still, relax, meet whatever the trauma or the pain or the block is, and do it gently. And healing occurs at its own rate. And I heard that in what you just shared too.
Yes.
Which is phenomenal. I have one more question, because we talked about it, so I'm setting you up just a little bit. But you are, and I'm super excited. We bring new teachers into every one of these conferences. I've been here since the beginning. You are not the first person that I've sat and had this conversation with who has commented on the lineup this weekend. So we want everybody to register and come and hang out with Ann Sweet to talk about what remains, who and what remains after the end of seeking, and continue this conversation with a friend and an advisor, not a teacher. And while you're here, there are 20 to 25 others. And you were talking about the quality of the people that you'll be standing next to on this weekend. And I'd love for those listening to hear your words about that.
Well, I feel very privileged and very humbled to be in the company of these teachers. And many of them actually are people that I quote on my website. You know, I use their insights and understandings to illustrate points on my website. So these are teachers, I won't name all the names, there are too many to name. But these are people who I have the highest respect for, people who are making a stand for awakening in this world and giving their absolute life force for other people to come to the same realization and recognition. And in a field, I sometimes call it the spiritual marketplace or the enlightenment industry, because, you know, there are so many different people doing so many different things. And a lot of it, from my perspective, isn't very sound. But the teachers at this conference, and I'm just so impressed with the quality and integrity of the presenters that you've chosen, because each one of them, I would happily endorse each one of them. As I said, I quote them on my website. They've been guiding lights for me, you know. So I think for anyone even considering coming to the conference, look, this is a rare opportunity. So make yourself available to this wealth of knowledge and wisdom that's being offered here for free. Unbelievable.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else? I told you, you know, my goal is 20 minutes and we're hitting 28 right now. So is there anything else you'd like to share before we say good night? Good morning, good night, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. But anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm looking forward. I'm very much looking forward to being together with everyone for our session. So I hope many of you can join us for that. And thank you, Cindy, for inviting me for this Facebook Live. Thank you. It's great to meet you. Thank you.
And it's terrific to meet you. Thank you. Please hit the share button and then go ahead and register for the conference. Tell your, you know, I have friends that bring their mothers, their spouses, their children, their sisters, everyone. It's a party. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.